And I always wonder if it's just a big elaborate display of peacock feathers.
I would suggest no. I have, of course, thought about this, but a lot of it, yes, is. But a lot of the great things are just done because of pure love and enjoyment. You know, a lot of think of the quote unquote stereotypical cliche starving artists. Well, a lot of artists were doing their work and they were starving, but they were doing it anyway because that's where they felt most alive. Absolutely, philosophers are, you know, the philosophical work. This is not a mating call.
Right.
They're basically doing this to survive, to live. You know, a lot of them were on the edge of suicide because they saw the cave and they were like, is this it? You know, I don't want to do this. I don't want to play that game. I don't want to play the game of the big peacock feather. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to engage. And
yeah, Turing is a great example of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people throughout history. You're right.
Yeah. So no. So I can tell you, no, it's not all about the big P. It's just the ones that we know about because they're so, just like Plato says, you know, they're so out there and we see them and they're so in our faces. And, you know, and Socrates said this in Phaedrus, you know, in this book, Phaedrus, that Plato wrote. He said, you know, once writing happens, he was criticizing the technology of writing. He said, once writing happens, people aren't going to know stuff. And it's going to be really horrible to be around them because they're going to be completely I'm paraphrasing, all about themselves. And they're going to be insufferable company instead of actually people that you want to talk to because they know some stuff and, you know, you have a good conversation with them. They're going to be all about their ego, basically, is what he was saying.
So he was connecting writing to ego?
Yes. Yeah.
So like saying that is it the idea that people could basically read a lot of books and gain knowledge through reading about it? But
not actually having it. Yeah. And it's really interesting, too. I happen to think this is really an interesting point.
I do, too. I think about this all the time, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do. The knowledge there's actually a term I read recently where it's knowledge... I read about it. Knowledge by association or by acquaintance versus knowledge by association, because everything we see in media, I think... You know, every single YouTube channel that's a guy who's a talking head who talks about politics, it's just all they're doing is reading the news or reading Twitter and reporting on it.
Yeah.
They don't experience stuff. They read stuff.
Yeah.
Or they listen to stuff and then they report it back.
Yeah.
It's even on like the news, like the television news, those people aren't experiencing much. Maybe there's situations where guys like go overseas into a war zone and like experience being in the middle of a firefight and have bullets flying everywhere and like meet people. There's definitely that. But I think most of it on TV is, especially when it comes to like the talking heads, all of it is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Secondary knowledge. Yeah. They don't. So Socrates identified this as actually when I look back at this and I reread him, I see it as a turning point in the Western culture, in the sense that he actually referenced knowledge that people would get from their actual environment. It almost sounds like, I can't prove this, but it almost sounds like he's talking about a download experience within the context of the environment where, you know, you have indigenous cultures where people have so much knowledge about their environment, right? They can hear things like if you and I went out into the forest, like the rainforest, like in Brazil or something like that, and they would be able to hear the different sounds in the forest and know exactly what was going to happen, like either rain coming or, you know, whether a dangerous animal is going to be there or, you know, what the state of the forest. You and I wouldn't hear that at all. We would go in there and we just hear like what we would consider to be forest noises. We would be able to, so we don't have any intimate experience of our environments, right? And so, so Socrates was actually telling Plato about this and talking about how there was once when people learned from the trees and they had this knowledge, but Socrates made a joke and he said, but you guys, you're so young and knowledgeable, you wouldn't know about this. So he's basically decrying this loss of this intimate knowledge, and that technology was actually going to foster it even worse. And it was going to create a type of person that was egotistical and think they know everything, and they were going to be horrible to be around. And I thought that was really funny. But I agree with you. I see that. I even see that in my own field, like people talking about a topic. Like in my field, there's a push to publish.